He was a thin-faced, pallid guy with a questionable taste in outlandish clothes. My mother used to dress like that. I beg your pardon. Are you André Lobineau?
That's me. You want my autograph?
No. I was told you may be able to help me.
Help?
My name is George Stobart. I'd like your professional opinion.
Well, okay. Shoot.
Does the name Montfaucon mean anything to you?
Sure. It was the most grisly spectacle in Paris until the Revolution.
A public toilet?
Montfaucon was the place of execution for many thousands. A dark temple of death, with row upon row of arches, each one framing a grim exhibit. Scores of rotting corpses swung on creaking rope, while the crows devoured their flesh.
That explains the image of the hanged man. I found a reference to Montfaucon in Ireland, in a village called Lochmarn.
Lochmarn? That's where Pegram was digging.
That's right. He'd left the excavation before I arrived. Where was the site of Montfaucon?
To the northeast, near the Canal Saint-Martin, but there's nothing there now. The old gibbet was torn down during the Revolution.
Do you know Pegram well?
Not really. I met him at a conference. I would have liked to talk to him in depth, but I didn't have time.
When was this?
Oh, back in the summer, July, I think.
The second week of July?
Maybe. Yes, it was, just before Bastille Day.
So Pegram was in Paris at the same time as the other victims.
Pardon? Victims of what?
Nothing. Just thinking aloud. What can you tell me about Philippe le Bel?
He was responsible for the extermination of the Knights Templar.
I know that, but why was Philip so hot to get rid of them?
Mostly because he wanted to get his hands on their treasure. He had an enormous debt and a lifelong war with England to fund. The trouble was, the Templars were a highly respected holy order.
If the Templars were so powerful, how did this Philippe dude wipe them out?
By underhanded, dishonorable means, of course. The Pope was Clement V, a Frenchman.
French, huh? Handy for Philippe.
Fate had nothing to do with it. He was Philippe's puppet, planted to further his political ambitions. Philippe wanted the wealth of the Templars and used Clement to get it.
So what was Philippe's plan? What happened?
Sealed orders were sent out all over France, not to be opened until the appointed day. That day was Friday, July 13th. That's the origin of our superstition regarding that date. At dawn, throughout the whole of France, the Templars were arrested. It was the biggest bust in the history of the world.
What happened to the Templars after their arrest?
Philippe was out for blood, so he handed the Templars over to the Inquisition. Not surprisingly, they confessed to a sensational and sordid list of blasphemies.
Like what?
Oh, the sort of things you read about in the gutter press. Devil worship, lewd sexual practices, spitting on the Holy Cross, that kind of thing.
Well, that must have given their lawyers some headaches.
Whether or not the accusations were true, this was not good publicity. Most of the charges were probably cooked up, but so were the Templars, literally. Hundreds of them were found guilty of heresy and flamed grilled at the stake. They died protesting their innocence.
But surely Philippe had no proof of his charges against the Templars.
A man will admit anything under torture. The Inquisition fabricated some nonsensical demon called Baphomet, and then suggested to their victims that this was what they worshipped.
But they didn't have to agree.
The records show a Templar coming to trial with both feet burnt off. Fragments of flesh and charred bone falling from the stumps. What would you not admit to stop such torment?
So there was no truth at all in the Baphomet accusations?
Not a shred. Almost every victim described the idol differently. No, Baphomet never existed outside the sick minds of the inquisitors.
So Philippe stole the Templars' riches, huh?
Oh no, they weren't stupid. The king's troops marched first on the temple in Paris, then to the Templar home port at La Rochelle. There was no trace of the treasure, and the fleet of the Knights Templar had set sail.
I'd like your opinion on a medieval manuscript.
Vraiment? Do you have it with you?
No, it's too fragile. And besides, there are certain people who'd stop at nothing to get their hands on it.
Intriguing. Do you have a copy of the text?
There isn't much, only a few Latin phrases. I was kind of hoping you'd help decipher the pictures.
Without seeing the manuscript, that's a tall order.
Just tell me one thing. What does the image of two men riding on the same horse suggest to you?
The Knights Templar. Does the Templar seal appear on this manuscript? I'd love to see that for myself.
Can you tell me anything about the Knights Templar?
I sure can, Georgie. Soldiers, diplomats, mercenaries, monks, bankers, you name it, the Templars fit the bill. The greatest fighting force in Christendom, the militia of Christ.
Jeez. How did the Templars get their name?
From the building in which they set up their headquarters. The King of Jerusalem gave them part of a mosque on the Temple Mount. It was said to have been the site of the original Temple of Solomon. The order became known first as the Knights of the Temple, and later as the Knights Templar.
You're a mine of information, Andre.
Glad to be of help, Georgie.
How come the Templars became so wealthy?
There was a constant stream of new recruits to their ranks, many from noble families. They were required to swear a sacred oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So, their money, goods, and lands were donated to the order. The Templars soon held land in France, Scotland, England, Spain, most of Europe, in fact. The poor Knights of Christ became the wealthiest power in Christendom.
Is it true the treasure of the Knights Templar was never found?
Who knows? So little knowledge of what really happened remains. Oh, if it does, the truth has never been made public.
What do you mean by that?
The Templars have attained mythological status, like the King Arthur of the Britons. There are people even now who say the Templars still exist.
Do you think that's likely?
No, not for a minute.
The manuscript is being looked after by a friend.
In Paris?
Yeah, not far from here, in fact.
Well, just give me the address and I'll come round and take a look.
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I should check with her first.
A female friend?
Yeah, she's a woman. Maybe it was my imagination, but I noticed a predatory look in his eye. Suddenly, this friendly historian had turned into the big bad wolf. This friend, who has the manuscript?
Oui, the anonymous girlfriend.
She lives at 361 Rue Jarry.
I know it well. I'll drop by. Just as soon as I can.
Take a look at this nose, Labinot.
It really doesn't interest me, Georgie.
Does the guy in this photograph look familiar to you?
No.
What do you make of this?
It's the biggest gemstone I've ever seen. Where did you get it?
From Professor Pegram's messenger boy.
Did Pegram find this on his dig?
Yeah, the site where this was found was a Templar castle. Do you think it could be part of the Templar treasure?
No, I shouldn't think so.
What do you make of this ID card?
Nothing.
What do you make of this tool?
Interesting. Where did you get it?
From a dig in Paris.
Vraiment? I didn't realize there were any excavations in progress in the city.
Does this matchbook mean anything to you?
Alamut is the name of the place where the Hashashin were based.
Where is it?
Somewhere in what used to be called Persia. I'm not too hot on modern geography, I'm afraid. The most recent map I have shows America as an English colony.
Do you recognize this white powder, Andre?
No,
I'd like to shake you by the hand, Andre.
not now, Georgie.
What does this tissue mean to you?
Nothing.
Thanks for your help, Andre.
You're welcome.
Pardon me.
Oui, monsieur?
I found this gem at a medieval site in Ireland.
That means nothing to me, monsieur.
How did you manage to get this job?
I had the right qualifications, a military manner, school wicked shoes, and an irrational hatred of children.
Thanks for your help. It was a public telephone. Hi, Nico.
What he wants, George?
I spoke to Labano about the manuscript. He wants to see it for himself.
Okay, tell him to come here.
Are you sure? Can we trust him?
Trust me. He's okay.
It was Rosso's sidekick, Sergeant Moo. Excuse me.
Ah, Monsieur Sтоббарт, n'est-ce pas?
That's correct. You remember me.
The retention of such data is part of my duty as a gendarme. That is how crime is fought, through attention to detail, not intuition.
Yes, sure. Have you heard of a man called Marquet?
Yes. He used to be known as the Mole of Montmartre. I heard he's been hospitalized, probably by one of his rivals.
Which hospital was Marquet taken to?
The Hagenmeyer Clinic, in the Avenue des Hérissons.
Why was Marquet known as the Mole of Montmartre?
Because he lived in Montmartre, I suppose.
Yeah, but why the mole?
I don't know. Maybe he ruined people's lawns.
I'd like to report an assault.
Yes, monsieur? Where is the victim?
I'm the victim. I've been harassed by a pair of thugs.
I see. And where did this alleged assault take place?
Outside the Hotel Ubu. They stopped me as I was leaving and went through my pockets.
Could you describe the suspects, monsieur?
One looked like a gorilla, and the other looked like a weasel. Their names are Flap and Guido.
Bon. I'll get them this time.
What are you going to do about Flap and Guido, Sergeant?
I'm going to bust them, monsieur. For years I have been hoping to pin something on that pair. Now's my chance. I'll show them. And the inspector.
Thanks, Sergeant. Thanks for taking me seriously.
I'm only doing my duty, monsieur.
Do you know a man named Khan? He's a shifty-looking guy with a scar on his left cheek.
No, monsieur. Has this man any connection with the bombing of the cafe?
Yes. I believe Khan was the name he used when he hired the clown costume. I found this red nose in the sewer.
What were you doing down there?
Fishing for clues. That's where the clown went.
You still insist you saw a clown, monsieur?
Of course. And this novelty nose proves it.
It will take more than a plastic proboscis to convince Inspector Rousseau.
You don't want this as evidence, then?
Certainly not, monsieur.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, monsieur.
It's the guy who bombed the cafe. The clown.
This man looks nothing like a clown.
He's taken off his grease paint and costume.
Then there is nothing to link this man with the killing.
Nothing? Look at those murderous eyes.
Hardly likely to get him convicted.
Maybe not. Does the name Merlin mean anything to you, Sergeant?
Nothing, monsieur.
What do you suppose this tool is used for, Sergeant Moo?
It looks like something an obstetrician would use, monsieur.
It was with tools like this that the clown made his escape.
I don't understand.
He opened up the hole and disappeared into the bowels of the earth.
If you say so, monsieur.
Does this matchbook mean anything to you, Sergeant?
That's a double-lined Swedish with a crosshatch Bergman strike strip. Now, that's unusual. Pre-war Anderson hinging.
Really?
I haven't seen a reinforced Anderson outside of a private collection.
It's rare, then?
In this part of the world, yes. There are only 3 places these are made. Taiwan, Manila, and Slough.
Maybe not. Would you like to shake my hand, Sergeant?
Not while I'm on duty, monsieur. The gesture could be misconstrued.
Do you recognize this dirty tissue?
No, monsieur, I do not.
I found it in the sewer.
Perhaps it would be better if you put it back there.
No way! This could be an important clue.
If you say so, monsieur.
Is Rosso here?
Yes, he is. You wish to speak to him?
Yes, I do.
One moment, monsieur. Sтоббарт is here to see you, monsieur.
Did he say what it was about?
No, monsieur.
Very well.
Hi, Inspector. Remember me?
But of course, Mr. Sтоббарт. My mind is a well-ordered faculty. A mental classification system that's the envy of the Bibliothèque Nationale. No tricks, mark you, monsieur. Just exercise. Just as our muscles waste through inactivity, so our minds decay. But there is no need. If only people would learn to exercise their wits daily.
If he was trying to impress me, it worked. He was pompous and patronizing, but he had style.
Eh bien, if you called about the bombing, you're too late. Investigations have been closed.
But
I have been taken off the case.
what about the murderer, the dead guy?
It is out of my hands.
Ever heard of a guy called Marquet? Jacques Marquet?
Marquet? I know the name well. He has a record for suspected blackmail, kidnapping, arson, and art theft.
An all-rounder, huh? How come he's on the loose?
His bravado is matched only by the courtroom skills of his attorney.
Have you heard of Professor Pegram, the archaeologist?
Molly Pegram, the second son of Lord Barclay Pegram.
I don't know. I only read about him in a magazine.
So much for the efficacy of rehabilitation. What has he done this time?
He made an important archaeological find in Ireland. Do you know Pegram well?
I have connections with the family, but I wouldn't say I knew him at all.
Is his name really Molly?
Of course not. That was the nickname he was given at school. All his friends and acquaintances know him as Molly.
Don't you want to know what I found out about the killer?
I told you, monsieur, the case is closed. I have washed my hands of the whole affair.
Then I'll have to continue my investigations without your help.
No. You must forget the business of the clown completely. Go back to being an ordinary tourist, Sтоббарт.
Do you know a pair of thugs called Flap and Guido?
I have known those two since they graduated from special school. Flap is a nasty piece of work, but Guido is the real brains of the partnership. Where did you hear of them?
I met them out front of the Hotel Ubu. Did you find out the ID of the guy who was killed in the explosion?
I already knew who he was.
I heard that the bomb victim's name was Plantar.
Your sources are reliable.
He was a big shot at the Treasury, wasn't he? Maybe that's why you've been taken off the case.
I'm sorry, monsieur. I cannot comment.
What was that psycho-detective business you did in the cafe?
It is my theory that the passions evoked in violent crimes create ripples in the ether, invisible to all but the possessor of a highly developed and receptive mind.
I'm impressed. Can you bend spoons, too?
I didn't think a man of your obvious intelligence would stoop to mockery.
I'm not mocking. I've had personal experience of the power of the mind. I used to get ignored at parties until I read a book that changed my life.
Really? What was it called?
Hypnotism for Fun and Profit. He looked at me as if I'd farted at a funeral.
The power of mesmerism is a rare gift, not a party trick.
You're not going to try any of that psychic interrogation on me, are you?
Do you find the thought of my probing distasteful?
Let's just say I'd rather you didn't. I've got more doubts than doubting Thomas when it comes to mysticism.
Too bad. I think you would make an interesting subject under controlled regression.
The day I let anyone mess with my mind hasn't dawned yet. Does this red nose mean anything to you?
I'd imagine it means you have not given up your pursuit of the clown.
You're absolutely right. Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No.
It's the face of a killer.
The man who bombed the cafe?
The photograph was taken soon after the explosion. He'd escaped through the sewers, leaving a trail of clues behind him.
Circumstantial evidence, Sтоббарт. None of it proves a thing.
What do you make of this, Inspector?
Astounding. Where did you come by a stone like that?
I was given it by a man in a bar in Ireland. Do you recognize the gem?
It is unfamiliar to me. If such a jewel had been stolen, I would know it for sure.
Does the name Thomas Merlin mean anything to you?
No, monsieur, nothing.
It's another one of the assumed names used by the killer.
Ah, the famous killer clown case.
Yeah. You might have forgotten all about it, but I still aim to find that guy. What do you make of this, Rosso?
It is a tool for gaining access to sewers.
Does this matchbook mean anything to you?
No, monsieur. I suggest you ask Sergeant Moo about that. God only knows why, but he collects matchbooks. He claims it is a hobby.
What do you make of this white powder, Rosso?
It is plaster.
Say, you're good. Would you care to shake my hand, Inspector?
Please don't be offended if I decline your offer, Sтоббарт. The palms of my hands are particularly sensitive.
I found this tissue in the sewer.
It would have been best if you'd left it there.
Have you heard of the Knights Templar?
Les Templiers? But of course, monsieur. Their fame is widespread throughout France. We haven't forgotten them, unlike the rest of Europe.
It was the King of France who persecuted them, though.
Indeed.
That shook his cool. Underneath his cultured facade, the man was real twitchy. You're obviously a great admirer of the Knights Templar.
They were men of great honor, monsieur. The flower of chivalry.
Not everyone would share your views, Inspector.
Not everyone shares my passion for Bartok.
But if the Templars were as honorable as...
That's enough. I do not wish to hear your uninformed opinions, Sтоббарт.
Why do you get so wound up about the Knights Templar? They've been dead for centuries. I shouldn't have pushed my luck. Maybe his ancestors were Templars. Whatever. I saw the anger flare in his eyes like a distant summer thunderstorm.
The Templars were the first true internationalists. 800 years on, and still the world is fragmented by nationalistic flag-waving fools. You will excuse me.
The old building managed to retain some of its original grandeur, but the modern additions looked like a baseball cap on a statue of a medieval saint. There was no sign of the crew of the ambulance. I felt a little guilty as I tried the door, like I was about to rob a grave. I gripped the handle with an involuntary tremble in my hand and pulled. The door was locked. The young man's face was full of eagerness and enthusiasm. I figured he was fresh from college. Hi, my name's George Stobart.
Pleased to meet you, sir.
Call me George if you like.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's my name.
My name's Benoit, but everyone calls me Bunny.
Bunny?
That's right. I used to have this cute habit when I was a kid.
Keep it to yourself, Benoit. Do you know anything about a patient named Marquet?
No, sir, I don't know much about any of the patients.
I've never met a doctor who admits that he's only human.
I'm only a trainee, sir. I'm sure I'll get the hang of things.
Does this false nose mean anything to you?
No, it doesn't.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, monsieur. I've never seen him before.
Does this gem mean anything to you?
Not me, sir.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Merlin?
No, sir.
What does this tool suggest to you?
Isn't that used to snap the patient's ribs when exploring the abdomen?
I hope not. Have you ever heard of the Club Alamet?
No, sir.
Do you know what this white powder is?
No, sir.
Shake my hand, Benoit.
I don't think that's a good idea, sir.
How come?
Dermatitis.
I don't have dermatitis.
I do.
What does this tissue mean to you?
Is that a nasal discharge, sir?
No, it's grease paint. See you later.
Right.
The woman managed to look overworked and hassled, though she didn't appear to be doing anything. Excuse me.
Yes, sir?
Is this the Hagenmeyer Clinic?
That's correct.
I thought I was in a garden center.
Oh, the plans. They were my idea. A little greenery to evoke the spirit of nature. How may I help you?
Has Marquet been visited by a man in a clown costume?
Oh, no.
You haven't seen a man in disguise?
Well, there's Theodore the bear. He comes every Thursday to entertain the children. Personally, I think he scares them half to death in that crummy old bear suit. If I was stuck on my back with tubes in every orifice, he's the last person I'd want to see.
Has Marquet had a visit from a pair of gangsters?
I should hope not. Can you describe them?
A thin guy who looks like a weasel and his friend, the gorilla.
Sounds as if they escaped from a zoo.
I'm here to see Jacques Marquet.
Oh, yes. Are you related to our client, sir?
Yeah, I'm his, long-lost brother.
A brother half his age with a different name and an American accent.
Yeah, people always say that. I blame Mom. We were separated at an early age, after a mix-up in the nursery at the Oakland shopping mall.
I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life.
I guess not. So, do I get to see Marquet before the funeral?
That attitude will get you nowhere. My instructions were quite clear. No one gets to see Marquet. So unless you can prove you're a relative or a close acquaintance, you're wasting your time here.
What does this false nose remind you of?
Oh, it's a clown's nose.
That's right.
Why don't you give me a break and go and play with someone else?
Have you seen this man here at the clinic?
No, sir. And I never forget a face.
What does this gem suggest to you?
I advise you not to flash that around. The hospital insurance wouldn't cover it if it was stolen.
Look at this ID pass.
So you're Merlin. Marquet's been asking for you.
For me?
Yes. He was shouting your name when they brought him in here. Now, let me see. He was on ward B12, as I recall. Oh, he's being transferred to... Oh, dear. He's on ward J2. That's... Nurse Grendel's ward.
What's so bad about Nurse Grendel?
She runs that ward like a South American prison.
Keeping a well-disciplined ward isn't a crime, is it?
Well disciplined. In the discipline and punishment stakes, she'd whip the butt off the Marquis de Sade. Everything, I mean everything, is done to a strict routine. 6 o'clock alarm call, 6:10 bowel movements, and woe betide anyone who doesn't have a result. Those patients of hers are like Pavlova's dogs.
She sounds like a real nightmare.
And then some.
If Nurse Grendel is that bad, how come the authorities tolerate her?
She's like part of the furniture.
Oh, you mean she's been here a long time?
No, I mean there's not a man in this clinic who hasn't sprawled out on her.
I was beginning to get the picture. This woman was jealous, with a big green capital J. What does this tool suggest to you?
Is it a crack detector?
Huh?
Polar explorers use them to poke about in the snow.
No. How do I find Nurse Grendel's ward?
Down the corridor on the left, turn right at the senior consultant's washroom. Right again at the executive coffee lounge. Bear left past the administrator's sauna. And turn left at the end. That's J2. And good luck.
Have you heard of the Club Alamet?
No. It sounds romantic, doesn't it? The kind of place where you get little umbrellas and whelks.
Huh? That's romantic? Is this plaster any use to you?
I'm allergic to plaster.
I'd like to shake you by the hand.
Don't be fresh, young man.
Can you think of any use for this greasy tissue?
I guess you could use it to baste a roast turkey.
Thanks for your help, ma'am.
You're welcome.
The guy seemed to be practicing his air of authority. Today, he was working on his withering stare. Hi, my name's George Stobart.
Really? If you wish to make an appointment, see the receptionist.
Do you recognize this red nose, sir?
No, I do not. This is a hospital, not a circus ring. We minister to the sick in body, not the sick in mind.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, sir, I do not.
Look at this, Doc. It's a genuine medieval-type gemstone.
Yes, so I see. Remarkable.
Does the name Thomas Merlin mean anything to you?
No, it does not.
Does this tool mean anything to you?
Sacre bleu! That's exactly what I needed in my last operation.
It is?
I had to improvise with a knitting needle and a couple of corks. If only you'd been on hand at the time, my patient would have given his right arm for it.
Have you ever heard of the Club Alamet?
No, sir, I have not.
Does this white powder mean anything to you?
No, sir, I do not pretend to know the pharmacist's job.
May I have the honor of shaking you by the hand?
You may not. I don't encourage physical contact between my staff.
Thanks for your help. As I turned the corner, I saw the source of the hellish noise which echoed through the corridors. It was an industrial polishing machine with an odd-looking guy in tow. He looked blissfully happy for no apparent reason. It was a classic example of functionalism, like an early Soviet spacecraft. I almost expected to see a dog or a monkey leap out. I wasn't in the mood for shining floors. It was a life-sized marble figure of a guy in robes. The sculptor had tried to give him a look of paternal authority and concern. To my mind, he looked just plain constipated. There was no way I could improve on the sculpture with the janitor watching me. Hello.
What's that?
I said hello.
Oh, hiya.
I'd like to talk to you for a minute.
That's what I thought you said. Don't look so down in the mouth. No matter how bad things seem, I never let life get on top of me.
Oh, yeah? What's your secret?
Why, it's easy. All you have to do is smile and whistle this little tune.
You know what? If you start whistling, I'll bust you in the teeth.
It's a deal.
Do you know a nurse called Grendel?
Sure I do.
Is she on duty today?
Yeah, end of the corridor, Ward J2.
Have you seen any unsavory characters lurking about in the corridors?
No, sir, I haven't. But I've got nothing to worry about. What's that, Mr. Shiny? You'd take good care of the rascals, I'll bet you would. With a friend like him, I've no fear of oppressors.
It must be a great comfort.
He is.
Would Mr. Shiny be your polishing machine by any chance?
Please, don't call him that. He's more of a friend than a machine. I've had Mr. Shiny for 3 years, and he's never let me down once.
How come you got so attached to a polishing machine?
I asked you not to call him that. He's got a name, you know.
Yeah, Mr. Shiny. It's just that...
You think it's odd, don't you?
No,
I don't mind. The rest of the staff think I'm twisted. I heard them snorking behind me back when I gave Mr. Shiny his weekly pull through.
Whatever you've got with this metal mop foot is probably a fine and noble thing.
It is. Say, it's not every day I meet someone as crazy as me.
Do you know where I'd find a patient called Marquet?
No, I'm not allowed on the wards with Mr. Shiny.
What does this tissue suggest to you?
You have a cold. What you need is vitamin C and a side order of machine oil.
Would you like to shake my hand?
Not until I'm washed, if you don't mind, sir. You can pick up all kinds of things in a hospital.
Like nurses, right?
No, sir. Bugs and germs and fungal infections.
Do you recognize this powder?
Is that dandruff?
No way.
It sure looks like dandruff.
It's plaster.
Ugh!
Do you recognize this matchbook?
You should never ever play with matches.
I know that, but...
People get hurt when they do.
Sure.
They end up in hospital, like the burger lady. She was so burned up, they didn't know whether to use bandages or onions.
Would this tool be any use to you?
No, sir. Mr. Shiny has no user-serviceable parts. Whatever that means.
Do you recognize this pass?
No, I don't. Should I?
No, but I wondered if you'd seen a stranger flashing it about.
No, sir. But if I had, Mr. Shiny would take care of him.
What do you think of this, Sam?
Oh, boy. What is it?
A priceless gemstone, found in a medieval castle in Ireland. Get me into Marquet's ward, and it's yours.
I don't wear jewellery.
If this gem was yours, you'd be able to buy 100 Mr. Shinies.
Don't be silly. There's only one Mr. Shiny.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
Who is it?
That's what I'm asking you. Have you seen him before?
How should I know? You haven't told me who he is.
Take a look at the photo.
Yeah, okay.
Now, have you seen him before?
No.
Take a look at this red nose.
Are you a policeman?
No, this is a clown's nose, not a policeman's. See you later.
Yeah, take care now.
I guess the water cooler was for the use of people lost in the corridors. Maybe the face of the unaccountably happy domestic had made me unduly suspicious. I mean, I knew it was only my imagination. but the water tasted, well, peculiar. The door didn't have a sign or label or any kind of identification.
Hey now, you can't go in there.
How come?
I'm responsible for the contents of that cupboard.
Oui, monsieur.
Is this Ward J2?
It is, but you're not supposed to be here. We have strict rules about visiting hours.
Can't you make an exception? I've come all the way from California.
You must speak to the doctor.
I can't wait that long. What if he snuffs it?
You can't talk like that here. This is a hospital. You will have to leave.
Do you have any clowns on the ward?
Why, yes, we do. A professional clown.
I'll bet he lightens the place up.
Hardly. Monsieur Boissy has been in a coma for the last 3 months.
What's wrong with Boissy?
He was involved in a very nasty accident. A silly stunt involving a unicycle. His current condition is due to post-traumatic shock. It's unlikely he'll ever perform as a clown again.
It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. Do you have a patient named Marquet on this ward?
Oui, monsieur. He is in the private room at the end of the ward. He has been placed in strict isolation.
You can tell me how my brother is, can't you?
Of course, monsieur. What is his name?
Jacques Marquet.
Let me see. He's satisfactory.
I was told he was dying.
Well, he is, but the doctor described his condition as satisfactory. That's quite an improvement on yesterday.
Do you know who paid for Marquet's room?
No, of course I don't.
Preferential treatment like that must cost an arm and a leg.
That's not my concern, monsieur.
Do you recognize this red nose?
Oh dear, I don't think he'll be needing that again.
Who?
Monsieur Boissy, the comatose clown.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, I don't.
Does this gem mean anything to you?
It's beautiful, but I've never seen it before.
Do you know Merlin of Gruber Electronics?
No, I don't.
Does this tool mean anything to you?
I don't recognize it.
Does this mean anything to you?
The Club Alamut? I've never heard of it.
Is this plaster any use to you?
No, it isn't.
Would you like to shake hands with me?
Well...
No, it's okay. Forget it. I didn't really want to use it on her anyway. Do you recognize this tissue?
No, I don't. It looks like a chronic health risk to me.
Well, I've been carrying it around for days and I'm okay. My pocket's getting a little soggy. Thank you, nurse.
You may come back at visiting time, monsieur.
Thanks. When is that?
The second Tuesday of each month.
The connector in the socket supplied electricity to the polishing machine. As I tugged the plug out of the socket, the polishing machine coughed, spluttered, and died.
Mr. Shiny, what's wrong, pal?
Dr. Stobart at your service.
Good afternoon, doctor.
Oh, hi. Is this Ward J2?
Yes, sir. The patients are ready for your inspection, Doctor.
Thank you, nurse. Well, who's first?
Monsieur Croquet in bed 2.
What's his problem?
He's been complaining of loss of consciousness. You'll need this, Doctor.
She gave me a long, narrow metal box and a stunning smile. Thanks. Hi, I'm Dr. Stobart.
Hello, Doctor.
The nurse told me you keep losing consciousness.
That's right. I've had the problem as long as I can remember. It's a real out-of-body experience. Like death, but not so conclusive.
I see. How long does it last?
Just a fraction of a second, and then I recover.
I might not have been a doctor, but I was formulating a diagnosis all the same. This guy was nuts. I know exactly what you mean. It's known in the medical field as blinking.
Is it serious?
Of course it isn't serious. It's perfectly natural.
But just think, 2 seconds every minute. Why, that's almost half an hour every day. 2 weeks out of every year spent in total darkness.
I don't have time to listen to this baloney. Which bed is Marquet in?
He's round the corner, in solitary.
What's the matter with him?
I don't know, but the men who brought him in were wearing masks and rubber gloves. Hey, you're a doctor. How come you don't know?
We doctors don't know everything.
Then how come you act like you do?
Has Marquet had any visitors?
Nah, neither have I. That's the worst thing about being in hospital. You feel like the rest of the world has abandoned you.
Well, you know how it is. Life goes on.
Thanks for those comforting words.
Do you recognize this red nose?
Nah, I don't.
Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
Nah, Doctor. Who is it?
A cold-blooded killer.
One of your colleagues?
No, he really is a murderer.
I've never seen him before.
Does this gem mean anything to you?
No, Doctor.
Have you heard of a guy called Merlin?
No, Doctor.
Do you know what this tool is used for?
Eye surgery.
That's a dumb thing to say. It's not sharp enough. Have you ever heard of the Club Alamut?
Nah, I haven't.
Do you know what this is?
Is it self-raising flour?
No. Do you know what this piece of equipment is called?
No, I don't.
I thought about giving him an electric shock, but I just couldn't do that to a sick guy. Have you any idea what this is?
Please, take it away before I throw up.
Well, goodbye and good luck.
Thanks, Doc.
Now, I was no doctor, but this guy looked dead to me. The guy was sick. His face was the same shade of gray as the pillow beneath his head. I wondered whether I ought to call the nurse. Maybe check him out for breathing. The name on the chart was Boissy. The poor guy's temperature had been up and down like a white knuckle ride. No wonder he looked so sick. According to the chart, this guy was called Croquet. The graph showed a steady decline in his pulse rate and an increase in his blood pressure. It kind of shook me to see this guy's life reduced to a few jagged lines. The name on the chart was Sopmarsh. His temperature was normal, with little fluctuation either way. This guy didn't look sick to me. He didn't have spots or stitches, and he certainly didn't have a fever. Hello? Anybody home?
Who are you?
My name is Dr. Stobart, and I'm here to steer you down the rocky road to recovery.
Dr. Monroe said there was no cure for what I've got.
Your problem is you stayed in bed too long.
Are you sure you're a qualified doctor?
You better believe it. What can you tell me about Marquet?
He's the man in the private room, isn't he? That room was mine before I was tossed out like a common squatter.
Do you know what's wrong with Marquet?
They won't even say what's wrong with me. Tell me, Doctor, what's your opinion?
It's too early to say.
But I've been here for 3 months.
What's your impression of Nurse Grendel?
She's a very efficient young woman.
Efficient? You make her sound like a vacuum cleaner.
I've no complaints.
The woman in reception described Nurse Grendel as a monster.
Well, that's simply not true. She's quite strict, but that's her job, isn't it? You've got to have discipline in a place like this.
Have you any idea what this is?
No, Doctor. I wouldn't even like to guess.
I thought about giving him an electric shock, but I just couldn't do that to a sick guy. I'm going to take your blood pressure.
Why?
I'm a doctor. It's my job. Do you know what this is?
It looks like plaster.
How did you know that?
I'm a plasterer.
Have you ever heard of the Club Alamut?
I'm not really a nightclub man, Doctor. A game of whist and a glass of ginger wine is about my limit.
Do you know what this tool is used for?
I'd rather not, Doctor. Ignorance is bliss, as they say.
Have you heard of a guy called Merlin?
No, Doctor.
Does this gem mean anything to you?
No, Doctor. Is this some kind of test?
If it was, you would have failed. Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, Doctor. Who is it?
A cold-blooded killer.
Really? He's a dead ringer for my bank manager. Of course, Mr. Soames hasn't got a scar, and he doesn't come from the Middle East. His hair's a lot grayer, too. Otherwise, it's just like him.
Remarkable. Do you recognize this red nose?
Doesn't that belong to Boissy?
No. I found it in a sewer.
He's a clown, you know. You wouldn't think so to look at him now, would you?
See you later. It was a life-sized marble figure of a guy in robes. The sculptor had tried to give him a look of paternal authority and concern. To my mind, he looked just plain constipated.
Doctor!
What is it?
You haven't taken my blood pressure.
Seems fine to me.
You're not doing it right.
Of course I am.
No, you're not. Dr. Monroe never did it like that.
I can't take a satisfactory reading while you're excited like this. I'll come back later. The nurse was stunningly beautiful. The guys on this ward sure were lucky to be in her care. Excuse me, sir.
You must be the new boy.
Yeah, I must be.
Well, stop wandering about and make yourself useful. Bunny, come here, boy. This is Benoit, my nephew. Can I trust you to look after him?
Do your own babysitting, Gramps. Who do you think you are, anyhow?
I am Felix Hagenmeyer.
And may I say what an honor it is to meet you in person, sir. You are on my medical wall of fame. Right up there with Pasteur and Leary. I look on it as a privilege, no, an honor, to look after your nephew, sir.
He is fresh out of medical school. It will open his eyes to see a real doctor on the job.
I'll bet.
Show him around. Let him see some real suffering.
So long, Hagenmeyer. Hey, Benoit.
There's no need to shout. What do you want?
Do you know the nurse on Ward J2?
No, monsieur. This is my first day here. I can't wait to get my hands dirty. I was talking about treating my first patient, of course. I didn't mean I'd get my hands dirty with a nurse.
Shut up, Benoit.
Okay, sir.
Here, take this pressure gauge.
Thank you, sir. What do you want me to do with it?
Well, keep it safe until I think of something. Follow me, Benoit.
I'm right behind you, sir.
Could you take a look at the client in bed number 3 now? His name is Eric Sopmarsh.
What's his problem?
He's delirious. He just now came out of theater. He's recovering from major surgery.
I'll have him up and about before you can say, Lazarus, get out of your bed and walk. Hi, it's me again. See you later.
Oh, Doctor,
What now?
you didn't finish taking my blood pressure. You don't have the first idea what you're doing, do you?
I'll come back when you've recovered your manners. Hey, Benoit!
Yes, sir?
Are you ready with that pressure gauge?
Primed and ready to pump, sir. What do you want me to do with it?
Use it on Eric Sopmarsh.
Okay.
He sat like a statue of a sack of potatoes, but the cop's eyes were as watchful as a hawk's. I'm Dr. Stobart.
Bonjour, Doctor.
Have you heard of a guy called Marquet?
He's in quarantine, Doc, right behind this here door.
Marquet is just the man I wanted to see.
I wouldn't go in there if I was you. He has anthrax.
I have to visit my patient.
What for?
Routine. I have to check he's still breathing.
What if he's not?
I'll sign the certificate and register his bed as vacant.
That's a cold and distant attitude to death.
Well, I've been institutionalized to the point of godlike aloofness.
The white coat suits you.
Thanks. Have you seen any suspicious characters on the ward?
Yeah, I have.
A gorilla and a weasel?
No, this was a tatty old bear.
How's the bear acting suspiciously?
Well, he was wearing a homburg.
Is that against the law?
No, but it's pretty weird for a bear.
Don't you think it's possible that the bear was a man in disguise?
Well, obviously, I'm not completely stupid. But who would go to the bother of disguising himself as a bear? It's not as if he'd blend in with the surroundings. I checked with base to see if any bears had been reported missing from the zoo or a traveling circus. They told me to sit tight until reinforcements arrive. I guess they're right. I'd be stupid to tackle a bear single-handed.
What does this tissue suggest to you?
It looks as if it has been used to wipe Satan's bottom.
I hate to say it, but you could be right. Would you like to shake hands?
What for?
As a gesture of goodwill.
On reflection, no.
Can you think of any sensible use for this plaster?
Sensible, no. Puerile, yes, but you've probably thought of those already.
Have you ever heard of the Club Alamet?
No. It sounds Middle Eastern.
What do you think this tool is used for?
Branding mice without bending down.
Are you Thomas Merlin of Gruber Electronics?
No.
Then you won't be needing this. Do you recognize this gem?
It isn't an emerald, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. Do you recognize the man in this photograph?
No, I have never seen him before.
Do you recognize this red nose?
Don't get cute with me.
Catch you later, officer.
Au revoir, Doc. If you see that bear, kick him in the nuts. Rather you than me, pal.
Marquet?
Yes, I am Marquet. I've been expecting you.
You have?
Well, what are you waiting for? Get it over with.
I just want to know what I should do with the gem.
The Lachmar gem.
Yeah, right here in my pocket.
Oh, I thought you were one of the assassins.
Not me. I never inhaled.
So, you were sent in my place?
Yeah. You could hardly make the trip to Ireland in your condition. What should I do with the gem?
Deliver it to the Grand Master. Quickly tell him that I have found the tripod right here in Paris.
You have it?
Not yet, but it's being taken care of. I hired a couple of stooges with a flair for petty crime.
Would that be Flap and Guido by any chance?
You know them?
We've met. What about the Hashashin?
Is more likely to have followed Klausner. He'll stop at nothing to prevent the reforging of the sword.
And that's bad, is it?
As for Klausner, he's gone off to Syria on a wild goose chase.
They have geese in Syria?
He has a theory about the location of the...
That's enough excitement for one day, Monsieur Marquet. What are you doing here?
Talking to this patient, of course.
Monsieur Marquet is my patient. If Herr Hagenmeier was to hear that...
Okay, I'm going. I'd learned all I could from Marquet anyhow.
Ah, there you are, sir. I was just coming to look for you. I finished with your pressure gauge.
Thanks, Bunny.
What's that noise? It sounds as if someone's having a cardiac arrest.
It's all right. The doctor's in there with him.
Are you sure he was a doctor?
Oui, monsieur. He showed me his ID. It was Dr. Braille.
There's no Dr. Braille working here.
He's an imposter! The door's locked. Help me, officer.
Stand back, monsieur.
I found Jacques Marquet.
Did he talk?
Yeah, he talked. For the very last time.
He's dead.
Yeah, killed in cold blood by a bogus doctor.
That's despicable. What kind of guy would pass himself off as a doctor and take advantage of a dying man? Was it Khan?
No, I don't know who he was, but it certainly wasn't Khan. He got away, out the window. Can you think of any use for this?
That's a thing for measuring blood pressure, isn't it? What are you doing with that?
I picked it up in the hospital. It could be useful.
You ought to take it back. Don't you feel guilty?
No. Have you ever heard of the Hashi-Ashin?
No.
Marquet said that they were his biggest enemy.
His biggest enemy was the bogus doctor.
Don't remind me. That guy was evil. He had wild, staring eyes like a dead fish. I'll never trust a doctor again. Do you think the assassin was responsible for killing Marquet?
I don't think so. He could have finished him off the first time. Besides, Marquet would have recognized him.
He was pumped to the gills with sedatives. He wouldn't have recognized the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse unless they'd introduced themselves. Have you found out any more about the Knights Templar?
Yes, I have. The guy responsible for their downfall was Philippe IV, the King of France, otherwise known as Philippe le Bel.
I've heard of him.
Well, he is known to history as Philippe the Fair, but I doubt if the Templars called him that. I'm sure André will tell you all about him.
I guess I'd better go back and talk to that weirdo.
Which one, Rousseau or Sergeant Mou? Oh, but you're referring to André.
I'll let you work it out. Oh, hi.
Hello, my handsome friend.
What does this apparatus mean to you?
The last time I saw one of those, I was about to go to the operating theater. The doctor told me there was nothing to worry about. I laughed in his face.
How come?
I can see the future, remember?
What do you make of this gem?
Very nice, chérie.
Have you seen anyone out here watching Mademoiselle Collard's apartment?
Yes, I have. A strange man, tall and thin as a broomstick. He kept his face hidden, but I saw his eyes peering from evil little slits.
How was he dressed?
A long brown raincoat with a hat.
Or like Humphrey Bogart?
Yes, but he didn't have Bogart's charisma. Besides, this guy looked like he needed a toilet. You never saw Bogart clenching his buttocks like that.
See you later.
That's right, monsieur. You will.